Welcome back to Tech TV here in Austin. I'm Ben Wodecki, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Bob Martin, the Senior Staff Engineer and the aptly named Wizard of Make from Microchip Technology. How's it going?
Very well, thank you for having me, and looking forward to a good discussion.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So we're talking a little bit about IoT sensor node designs, semiconductors. Now, for those who don't know, Microchip are one, you guys manufacture and develop loads of semiconductor products.
Yes.
But we're specifically starting off with sensor node designs. Talk to us a little bit, Bob, about what you've seen in kind of recent trends around those designs.
Well, certainly now there are more choices in the channels you get to the cloud. And that's, I think, one of the most important partitioning questions that a customer needs to ask, or a designer of a node needs to ask, is what they know what they want to measure. But sometimes, and I see this a lot, is they overestimate the speed of the channel they need. And the trade-off between speed of channel and power, right? The faster you want to go, the more power you take. So if you've got infinite power, then that's not a problem. But then as you go to higher channels like Wi-Fi, commissioning in the field becomes a problem. So the first step is like, if we're talking, or a customer comes in and I'm talking to them, at a show like this, it's like, what's the intent of the sensor? What are you doing? Do you want to mesh it or whatever? And I can help guide them to the optimum channel, or the optimum type of RF channel, right? Wired, that's not an issue, because then they've got power. So the trends now, definitely in battery powered stuff, I think by default is lower power. So I'm seeing sensor manufacturers, they're getting to the point where they can't reduce any of the current, operational current, so they're lowering the voltage. That adds some extra challenges in the IoT node design, because batteries aren't squishing down. You get 1.5 or 1.55 or 3 or 4.2 for LiPo. Every time you drop a voltage level, you have to regulate it, and you're throwing away heat. So the trends are to go in lower voltage, which adds its own problems in noise levels as well.
So one of the main trends, I think, that's more than well documented in the semi space is the pandemic, and obviously the chip shortage as well, but I'm keen to know how the pandemic impacted things like maintenance and installation as well.
So that's interesting, because toward the pandemic, the first part of the lockdown, that affected everything, obviously. But for critical systems, I think it might have actually improved the ability for maintenance, because buildings were empty, right? It was okay to shut down an HVAC system and take care of it, and then they allowed, and then some of the first built were maintenance people. I mean, that's critical infrastructure care. So and toward the beginning of the pandemic, the chip shortage wasn't really upon us. It was looming up, right? Like all those things, that the perfect storm came together for the chip shortage. And then now, the difference is we're forced to, or customers are forced to, make design decisions based on what's available, as opposed to what they want to use sometimes.
And Bob, on that, you work with clients across various markets that have obviously had different things going on the last couple of years, and they each require their own needs. How do you kind of tailor semis for those specific verticals?
Well, our general approach is we have such a broad array in our product portfolios, especially microcontrollers, which tend to be the heart of a sensor. And coming back to the partitioning, is how much intelligence do you put on the sensor, or do you want to put on the sensor? And from there, I can narrow it down to an array, or narrow that list down of options for them. And then, then we go into discussions about power supply and RF channel, and do you want it modular? Is this a sensor that you would like to easily swap out the communication channel for? And then I can guide them on the design on how to make that work with a minimum of a redesign for their sensor. So, I think, but it's more just it's more just looking at a large menu on one of those diners, and then having the server help you narrow down your choices. Like, what do you like? Do you like bacon? No, I'll go and, okay, try this page.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't like bacon at this point. Bob, I'd like to kind of grasp your understanding of whether clients actually understand their kind of operational needs, because the last 2 years have created an environment whereby they need to be more aware of what what their buildings are doing, what their sites are doing, what their systems are doing. But would you say that is the onus on vendors like Microchip to help your clients understand what their needs are?
Slightly, but you never want to tell a customer what to do.
Of course.
And so you walk that fine edge where I've been, from previous experience in what I call the real world, in my real world experience in industrial and environmental monitoring. I just ask questions of them. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? And you bring up a good point on maintenance and installation, because sometimes the concept of like, okay, I've got 8 sensors in my lab, or I've got 8 sensors around the test lab or in the building, and everything is working. You need to consider what the impact of, like, are you installing 1,000 sensors? What's the skill level of the person installing those sensors? How do they know the sensor's working? Are you going to have, are you going to add some type of simple feedback interface? Because, if it's a large sensor array, you're not going to be wanting people to like pop up a laptop every time if it's a simple sensor. The cost of ownership and installation should not be orders of magnitude more than the cost of the sensor itself. I mean, the return on investment, if it's preventive maintenance, is tough to see sometimes, but then you have to take into account the overall long-term benefit of not having an HVAC unit explode on the roof of your building.
So Bob, on that, what are the kind of questions that you would ask a client when it comes to designing for someone else?
I would say so some of the partitions again, and how much data are you sending? How often are you going to send it? How reliable and how secure that data needs to be. There's no security, some security, ultimate security, or so to speak. Are these nodes disposable? Are they one shots? Are they worth maintaining or upgrading the battery? You're just going to let them die in the field. Like again, industrial stuff that's powered, you're probably going to keep them around. Again, ease of installation. Have you thought about completely thought about the environment that you're installing them in? Tops of buildings get a lot hotter. Direct sunlight, heat and vibration. It's a very nasty environment up there. In environmental stuff, lightning strikes happen. So again, it's what I recommend is like, have you actually been, and a lot of them have, but some of them haven't, and say we have this brilliant idea, but they've never actually sat down and physically just sat or looked around in the environment they're installing these sensors for 20 minutes and just notice things.
Well, they've got, I'm going to take that from the top, just that one last bit. So Bob, we've covered an awful lot in the last, nearly got it. But we've covered a lot. What's your final kind of key takeaway for those out there looking to kind of work with you guys or work with the kind of semi-space and want to get some help designing their value stream?
I think it's important, it helps us if you have a clear understanding and a clear mission of what you want to measure or why you want to measure it. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to do your product. I'm just going to, and by us, Microchip, we're just going to give you the best guidance we can, taking on our combined experience, not only from the wide breadth of microcontrollers and mixed signal that we have, but certainly the experience that we have in this type of space to go, okay, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? And are you comfortable where you're at with your design?
Well, they appear in safe hands. Bob, thank you so much for your help and your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
All the best. Thank you.